Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from every part of Nigeria or indeed every part of the world that you are joining us from. This is how not to do first aid. This particular topic for this course was carefully chosen. It was carefully chosen in the sense that we know in this part of the world and indeed in some other parts of Africa how we approach emergencies, especially health emergencies, differ depending on the practices, the cultural practices in our society. We have seen people lose teeth because helpers or first aiders are trying to stop convulsion. We have seen children lose the ability to walk when the first aider sticks their leg into the fire to stop them from convulsing, and so many other practices that may have been causing a lot of harm to people we are trying to help. And that is why in this course we'll be looking at some of these practices, and we'll also be discussing extensively on what we can do that will appropriately help people in distress, that will appropriately help people who need the help. So once again, let me welcome us all to this free first aid course from L-Educate. Thank you. Welcome back. I will be your guide in your quest, in your decision to get transformed from the position you are currently as far as first aid is concerned to a position where you can confidently step forward and help people in distress. My name is Lukman Olushisi. I'm a public health physician of over 20 years. Indeed, I have spent the better part of my working life in an educational institution. I'm involved in health promotion. I enjoy teaching. And indeed, I am more of a teacher in the consulting room than a doctor, and I love it. I'm a fellow of the Commonwealth Professionals, as well as an American Heart Association certified basic life support and advanced life support provider and instructor. So I will be your guide, and I will be available to take all questions and queries as we progress in this particular course. Thank you. Now the question is, why are we here? What do we stand to gain by learning first aid? Or rather, what are the objectives of first aid? Well, the first objective is to preserve life. Whatever we do at the point of accident, whatever we do at the point when somebody suddenly collapses or faints, or whatever else happens that threatens the person's life, the steps we take at that point will determine or might determine if this person is going to live or die. So the first objective is to preserve life. Secondly, the second objective is to prevent this situation from getting worse. As a matter of fact, what you do immediately, things happen. Accidents happen, sudden illnesses will determine whether the victim or the casualty is going to recover fully, or whether this victim or casualty is going to be permanently disabled or die. So it lies in the hand of the first aider to make a difference between dying or being permanently disabled or attaining a full recovery from whatever events that may have happened. And our third objective is that to promote recovery. If we do our first aid intervention properly and appropriately, then the victim is going to spend less time in the hospital. The victim might not even need to go to the hospital because you have done the proper thing at the initial stage. Then the person may actually go back home and recover. There are a lot of unnecessary hospital visits because we don't know what to do. As a partaker of this course, you will, as we move along, know what to do and how to institute or administer some first aid procedures so as to achieve these three objectives. Welcome back. This course has been divided into chapters and, if you like, modules for ease of flow of the course. In module 1, we are going to be looking at introduction to first aid and a number of other things. In actual fact, it's under this module that we'll be talking about the law that guides first aid. Recently, a woman actually sued a man who rescued her from drowning. Yeah, she sued him, saying that when she regained consciousness, she could perceive the smell of her mouth. Now we are going to be talking about how this kind of cases had gone in the past and what happens to the first aiders. In module 2, we are going to be looking at resuscitation. We are going to be spending a whole lot of time in module 2 because this is where we will learn about cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR for adults, for children, for infants. This is where we are going to learn about the automated external defibrillator that we call the AED. This is where we are going to be looking at a whole lot of things. Somebody who goes into cardiac arrest, what are the steps that you can take to actually give this person a second chance of life? In module 3, we are going to be looking at choking. Somebody, maybe a ground knot or something has blocked the airway, and the person, if the person is not rescued, within 5 minutes, that person is likely going to die or go unconscious. In module 4, we are going to be looking at seizures, convulsions, what we do to stop convulsion, what is proper and what is not. In module 5, we are going to be looking at several medical emergencies, stroke. You're going to look at diabetic emergencies. We'll be looking at how we can help asthmatics who are in crisis, and so on and so forth. In module 6, we'll be looking at different kinds of injuries: head injury, neck injuries, back injuries, and so many others. In module 7, I actually reserved this to near the bottom, bleeding, because I know that quite a number of people are not so comfortable with blood. But as a first aider, you will need to do something about an individual or a victim who is bleeding. Otherwise, the person is going to bleed to death. And of course, in module 8, we'll look at poisoning. When somebody accidentally ingests a poisonous substance, children ingesting kerosene and all whatnot. What are the appropriate steps to take? So this is not exhaustive because we're going to be talking about more things than we have here, but this is just going to act as a guide for the entire course. Thank you. Now, under each module, we will have several lessons. Several lessons like this one, for instance, how to recognize an emergency and evaluate a scene for safety. How to activate emergency medical system. Although this in our client sounds very foreign because there's no system in place, but we can actually talk about how we can at least call for help when emergencies happen. We're going to be talking about the legal issues related to providing first aid, like I earlier mentioned. We're going to be looking at how to prevent exposure to infection as a first aider. We're going to be looking at the signs. How do we recognize heart attack? What do we do about them? How do we recognize stroke? What do we do about them? How do we recognize cardiac arrest? What do we do about them? How do we recognize somebody who is choking and can still respond to your instructions, or somebody who is joking and has gone unconscious? How do you size up? How do you assess initial scene or the environment where an accident has happened? How do you place someone who is unconscious but breathing in recovery position? We are going to be going through all this one after the other, and we are going to also be checking your level of understanding after each of the lessons, so that we will be sure that you know how to go about all these things. We'll be talking about how to move a victim in an emergency. We all know the various ways by which we move victims here. Somebody grabs the leg, somebody grabs the arms, and will be dragging a human being like a sack of rice. We'll be looking at the proper way to move victims. We'll be looking at how do you recognize what to do when somebody is bleeding, and what to do when the person goes into shock. How do you prevent infection? What are the first aid for head injury, spine injury, eye injury, dental emergencies? You accidentally knocks off a tooth. What do you do to rescue? Then abdominal wound, chest wound, joints and bone injuries, fractures, and so and so forth. This course is actually very loaded. You're going to be looking at respiratory emergencies. You're going to look at asthmatic attacks, allergic reactions. If you have seen an individual who, after eating peanuts or groundnuts, just began to have the eyes, getting swollen, the chest getting tighter, the person could not breathe and all that. That is what we call allergic or anaphylactic reaction. What can we do about them? We'll be looking at seizures, what to do when somebody faints, looking at diabetic emergencies, poisoning, heat-related emergencies. Somebody has been standing in the sun for a long time, and as a result of the heat, the person has gone suddenly ill. And we'll also be looking at cold-related emergencies. For those of you who are preparing to go to, Canada and the US and the UK during winter, things can happen. We'll be looking at a whole lot of things: insect bites, insect stings. How do you approach such situation? So these are some of the things we'll be talking about, and it is on that note. It is on that note that we have come to the end of this particular lesson, Introduction to First Aid. If you have any question regarding this particular lesson, the platform is going to be open for question and answers, and we shall do our best to respond to your questions. Thank you once again for joining us, and see you in the next class.